Hi, I'm Elizabeth Montague, and I'd like to introduce some anthropological research I completed for my master's degree at New Mexico State University. If you don't already know what anthropology is, it's basically the study of what it means to be human. You can take a look at my video, What is Anthropology?, linked in the description below to learn more. My research explored methods of preparing homemade raw fermented foods, as well as ways of knowing and learning related to fermentation and perceptions of health, food safety, and the body among home fermenters in the U.S. If you participated in this study, you may remember that I originally planned to include food safety experts or medical microbiologists. Unfortunately, that part of the study didn't work out, so I'll just be focusing on research related to the ideas and practices of home fermenters. I'll just be giving a quick overview of the results of the study in this presentation, so if you want to know more about anything mentioned here, you can send me an email through the study website. If you're watching this on YouTube, that link is below. First of all, it's important to have some understanding of what fermentation is. There are actually multiple definitions of fermentation, but for our purposes we can understand fermentation as a process by which microorganisms bring about biochemical changes in foodstuff, with the resulting foodstuff being edible. The microorganisms that act on food or drink in fermentative processes tend to produce byproducts like alcohol or lactic acid. My research focused on non-alcoholic preparations. Examples of non-alcoholic fermented foods include things like sauerkraut and yogurt, and on screen is a photo of kombucha, a type of fermented sweet tea. The film you see in my hand there in the picture is often called a SCOBY. That is a symbiotic community of bacteria and yeast, and it's what ferments the sweet tea. For this research, I used a combination of methods, including semi-structured and informal interviews. Now, a semi-structured interview is just what it sounds like. The anthropologist has a series of prompts like, when you think of fermentation, what do you think of? Or what concerns about food do you have? And based on how the interviewee responds, the anthropologist might ask follow-up questions. Informal interviews, on the other hand, are more conversational. For example, in my research, I would ask questions about the fermentation process that research participants were using while they showed me how they made different fermented foods. Which brings me to the classic research method of cultural anthropology, participant observation. Participant observation is a lot like what it sounds like. The anthropologist both observes and attempts to participate in the activity she's studying, taking notes along the way. In my case, this also meant taking photographs. The participants in this research generally began practicing the preparation of non-alcoholic fermentations as adults. One of the most interesting things that came through in this study was seeing that the actions that home fermenters take, their ideals and perspectives, and the outside influences in their lives, such as economics, can't really be separated from one another. Home fermenters continually negotiated their fermentation practice and the knowledge and meanings associated with it in conversation with those varying influences. The results of the study suggest that home fermented foods for these participants was a health practice, and these participants had a framework for health and food safety that was associated with balance. It conceived of microbes as potentially beneficial. The participants that in my study engaged in various ways of knowing and learning, especially informal types, including cookbooks, internet research, social networking, and experiential learning, as well as sensory ways of knowing like smell or sight. Science was esteemed as a valuable way of knowing, but claims of scientificity were not necessarily accepted based on participants' perception of the motivation behind such claims. Similarly, formal educational experiences, when drawn upon, tended to be reevaluated and partially rejected. The concept of tradition was an important theme in this research, acting as an authoritative way of knowing and as an expression of perceived deficiencies in modern U.S. society. Fermented foods could also act as an expression of dissent and agency with fermented foods themselves could act as an expression of dissent and agency with regard to the U.S. food and health systems. Participants' home fermentation methods and food safety practices were also variable, based in part on different concepts of fermentative processes. Fermentation and its consumption, then, can actually be seen as the embodiment and material expression of home fermenters' ideals and conceptual frameworks. If you have any questions about my research or anthropology in general, feel free to contact me privately through the study website, or if you're watching on YouTube, you can leave a comment below. Thanks for watching.